Good morning. How are you all doing? Are we awake? Had our coffees, juices, raring to go? You're raring to go. Fantastic. I'm not the stripper. You can relax. It's okay. Before I start, I'm not a normal therapist. Okay, I don't do normal therapy things. I don't class myself as a therapist, and everything I say to you today will be the complete opposite of everything you've heard. But I need to do that because for a lot of people, what they're doing is not working. What they're doing to solve their problem, whether it is anxiety or something else, the technique they're using, the method, the systems they're using don't work for them. They're just maintaining and controlling it. And I believe that one day we will live in a world where anxiety, depression, pain, suffering no longer exist. Where suffering and illness are no longer words, they're a thing of the past. Where we'll just wake up every day feeling happy, healthy, and living our lives and enjoying ourselves. And to do that, I have to kind of re-educate people as to what's causing their problems. Because we have a lot of beliefs these days about what causes our problem, but it doesn't solve the problem. And I'm very much into solving the problem. I don't like maintaining it or controlling it because that's draining. That's tiring, living with it, suffering through it. That is exhausting for a lot of people. I know because I've experienced a lot of things. I've experienced anxiety myself. I know how draining and tiring it was trying to live with it. I even created through law of attraction. Good morning. That's all right, no worries. We'll dock it later for you and charge you extra. That's fine. I know that through law of attraction, when I was suffering anxiety, I actually made it worse. I actually had paranoia, which for me was worse, doubly worse than anxiety. And I actually ended up drawing a minor car accident to me because I was so paranoid. No one was hurt, it was a minor thing, but I'll go into that more details later. So I know how it feels when people suffer anxiety. I know how it feels when people have pain. And when I had them, I wanted to solve it. I didn't want to control it. I didn't want to live with it or suffer with it. I wanted it gone. And I've learned a lot of techniques over my time. I've learned loads of things that really helped, and some of them work, some of them didn't. Sometimes they work, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they work on one problem, then they wouldn't work on another problem. And it really puzzled me, and I couldn't quite understand it. And then I developed something that changed my life, but I will get into that a little bit later. So before we go any further, who here suffers with anxiety? Brilliant. Okay, right. Call centre, no more anxiety. Okay, so that's a belief. She thinks a call centre is causing anxiety, and she's joking. I get that, but there is such that you wasn't. No, but call centres, I agree, can be very, very frustrating. Usually because they're in a foreign country and you can't get anyone who's actually connected to the company, you can't get hold of the boss or anyone. They don't really have any power, and they don't really do what you want them to do. So that can be very frustrating. But the question I would pose with you is, why is it causing one person anxiety and another person's okay with it? It doesn't make sense. Yes?
The person who knows themselves are happy.
That's very, very good. The person who knows themselves are happy. Now that is actually true. Part of what I do is bringing the person back to being you. When you are getting anxious, you are not being you. You are being triggered into something. You are being triggered into a response, and that's very, very important. Well done. You don't need me. You can leave. You don't need to be here.
Learn the technique.
Oh, okay, right, cool. So, you're a therapist. What do you do?
I'm a homeopath.
Homeopath.
And various different healers.
Okay, cool. Reiki and energy healing. Fantastic. So, what's your name?
Janie Thomas.
Janie. Nice to meet you, Janie. There's a lot of great therapies out there. Janie's mentioned two of them, homeopathy and healing, and I'm trained in Reiki and other types of healing and EFT and matrix reimprinting and theta healing. I've done a lot of it. And like I say, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And I'm going to explain that today, because today my talk, as Carrie says, about what to do when nothing else works. So if you are trying things, if you're going to therapist, but it's not working, I'm going to show you why. And I'm going to show you what to do about it. Because there are two main challenges you have if you have anxiety. And that really goes for all of the, I don't like the word mental problems, because that implies we're mental and we're not. I'll explain it in a second. But that goes for depression and panic attacks as well. and all the other psychotic symptoms that the brain goes through. There are two main challenges. The first challenge is to understand why what you're doing so far is not working. Now, the reason you need to know that is because if you don't understand that, you're going to carry on doing that thing. You're going to keep doing it, hoping one day it's going to work. And maybe you'll even go and try something else that's similar to that, hoping that that will work. But you don't know why it's not working, so you're going to go in a spiral, go around in circles, get frustrated, which will eventually lead to loss of hope and giving up and just accepting your symptoms and suffering, which we don't want, right? Who wants that? No, great. So the second thing you need to know is exactly what to do to solve your anxiety. Like I said, I'm not into maintaining and coping it. I'm not going to give you coping strategies. I'm going to show you what you need to do to solve it, and I will give you a tool at the end of it, a very little technique that will start you on that process, a basic way of doing it. But that tool will expand into actually solving the problem once and for all. So if I could show you a roadmap, the exact steps you need to solve it when nothing else has worked, would that help you?
Yeah.
Your enthusiasm is overwhelming. Don't hold back anymore, you let it all go, please. Just now some of you will be going, that's not possible. Don't believe it, can't get rid of it. Some of you will be like, oh please, I just wish that was true. Some of you don't care. And the problem with that is that you all have beliefs about what is possible. One of my philosophies is what you believe will be your reality. Now, we all hear it all the time, especially therapists. We're all told that, but I work with a lot of colleagues who are therapists and they don't really apply it to themselves. They are stuck in a loop somewhere. And I've been there too, don't get me wrong, and I'm not perfect. But the belief is the problem. The belief stops you from getting better. The belief that it can't be solved will then block you and go, well, I can't solve it, so I'll stop looking. Yeah. I won't bother. Or I've tried this, this, and this. Good morning. I've tried this, this, and this, and it's not worked, so I'm going to stop. I'm not going to bother anymore. I'm going to give up. And I've been there. I've done that. And then when I gave up, I found this technique that I used, ironically, as a lot of therapists end up doing. So I want you to try and get that belief out of your head. There is always a way. You just haven't found it yet. You haven't been shown the steps. You've been given advice. You've been said, try this, try that, try this, try that. And sometimes they will work, and that's great. So if you've got something that's solving it, brilliant. If you haven't, I'll show you why. And by working, I don't mean maintaining and controlling it. That's not working. You should be healthy, you should be happy, you should be out enjoying your life. I don't believe whoever put us on this earth said we should be miserable for the rest of our lives. That makes no logical sense to me. Now, that's just personally my belief, but that is what I believe. And because of that, that keeps me going, keeps me motivated, keeps me solving problems. So I'm going to answer those two things. First one, why what we've tried so far has not worked, and two, what you need to do to solve it, the exact steps. So the first thing you need to know is why what you're trying is not working. Who can give me a list of things that they're trying that is not solving the problem? So shout some things out that you're doing that's not really, it's not taking it away, it's just controlling it. Any examples? Or are you just not doing anything?
No, I'm just still a bit skeptical. I can understand mindset is everything, and you can stop getting yourself all worked up and, try and remain calm. But at the end of the day, certain problems need to be solved. Broadband not working, BT saying, oh, engineer, try this, for an hour you go through all the spiel. And you can try and keep yourself calm, but you cannot solve the problem. You need help, and it's not within yourself to get that help. You've got to look outside for that help. And the worst is when the call centers go round and round and say, have you tried our website? No, that's why I'm phoning you.
Okay. That's brilliant. I totally understand.
The mindset, I can control my anger better, and I can, channel my energy in the right way, but it does not solve the problem and you want to
Okay, so I totally understand. What's your name?
Gilda.
Gilda, hello Gilda. I totally understand what you're saying, and that is the response of every human being, 90% of the population, that they do. They think the external problem is the problem, and they think that the external problem has been created even though they're the ones who's always there. So another philosophy I have is that whenever you have a problem, you're the one who's always there. Whenever you are arguing with someone, you may have 10 people in your life that you hate, but you're the one who's always there talking to that person. You may have problems going on around you, phone bills, phone not working, internet not working, house falling down. You're the one who's always there. What that means is, that's law of attraction. That means you are running something in your system that is zipping it and creating the chaos around you. Hold on, don't freak out. I can see some of you going, what? No, don't do that, that's scary. It's law of attraction. Who's heard of law of attraction? Great. A lot of people have heard of law of attraction, but they don't totally get it. They don't totally get that you are creating your reality. Whatever is not working for you in your life, you have created that. I don't mean you did it consciously. I don't mean you sat there in that morning and went, I want my internet to stop working today and really annoy me, because that's nuts. But something inside of you is interfering with the energy that's creating that problem. I'm going to give you an example from my life, and I'll show you how I solved it. So I had a problem with a marketing person that I worked with, and he was very, very good, but we clashed on a couple of things, and it didn't end very well at all. And he got very nasty and started sending emails and threatening emails. Now, you would say that's him. You would say that's his issue. He's running that. You could say that's him. Yeah, I could just blame him and go, well, you know, I did everything I possibly could. I was as fair as I could possibly be. That's my perception. Obviously, you don't technically know that, but that's my perception. I did everything I possibly could. But he's now angry, so that's him. So I'm just going to not do anything about that. But he wouldn't go away. Now, I wasn't rude to him. I was very polite. But in the end, he just kept on and on. So what I did was I changed how I felt about it. I took my anger out. I took my beliefs out about the situation. I took out all the emotions I felt about myself and all the emotions I felt about him. And within 24 hours, he emailed me apologising and saying everything was okay and everything was fine. I did not change him. I changed me. That's the way I always do it. I change me. That's how I work. Now, I have clients come to me all the time and they say the exact same thing. Oh, this problem, that problem, that problem. I had one lady come to me years ago and she said, my sons don't love me. Now, I used some EFT and Matrix back then when I was doing it. I did a couple of sessions with her, and within 48 hours, one of her sons called her and said, you know, Mum, that we really love you. Now, I didn't call her sons and get them to say that. I don't know their number. I just changed her response. I had another lady, and she said she didn't feel connected to her brothers. She had fibromyalgia, she couldn't get out, all this. I don't feel connected to my brothers. When I send them a text, they never reply. I did one session on her, cleared out some beliefs, and within 24 hours, her brothers texted her and said, do you want to come to the cinema the next day and go and watch a movie? She didn't do anything, she didn't contact them. So if you want to change what's bothering you around you, you have to look inside yourself. This is not a blame thing, it's not your fault, but there's something running, something that happened as a child, something that bothered you, a trauma or a shock, that is creating that problem. What a lot of people get into is they get into this thing, we blame the external world. And if you want to do that, that's okay, but you'll always be a victim to your problems. Whatever you blame, you will then suffer it, because the external world's not doing anything to you. It's sitting there doing nothing. You are running everything. If you're getting frustrated, if you're getting angry, if you feel guilty, that's you. If you hate what's happening there, that's you. I had one lady say to me, she used to pick up on people's energies. Another common belief that therapists have, that they pick up on people's beliefs and energies and things. And I used to believe that too, so what I'm going to say is going to completely fry your circuits right now. But when I believed it, it didn't work for me, because I couldn't stop it. I couldn't change it. It didn't feel right. So sometimes I'd work with someone who'd been raped and abused, and I'd walk away and I'd be okay. And then I'd work with someone who had normal things, and I'd be a complete mess. And I realised that what was happening was that the person who had normal things was just talking about the same things that I had running, and that was bringing them up in me. And as soon as I realised that, I stopped taking on people's apparent energy. I was fine with people, and anytime I recognise that, I go, okay, where's that running in me? And I switch it off. And one of my clients said to me, well, what about the news? What about the TV? I was watching the TV when that horrific shooting in France happened on the beach, and I felt overwhelming grief for the family. So I said, okay, close your eyes. Go back to that memory. Look at that TV screen. Look at that memory. Tune into the grief. What does it remind you of? And she went, my sister. Now, her sister hadn't died, but they'd lost that connection, and for her that was a grief. And all that reminder was the loss of her connection with her sister. And as soon as I cleared that out, it stopped. So be careful what you believe, because what you believe will be your reality and keep you stuck. And I see it every day.
Compassion. You know, you might say, okay, I'm not grieving, but you have to feel compassion when you hear such horrific news.
That's great, but she wasn't feeling compassion. She was feeling grief. And grief is not compassion, grief is grief. And grief was not for the people, it was for her sister. There's a misconception between words. People misunderstand compassion, empathy, and negative emotions. If you were genuinely being compassionate, you would look at that and go, wow, that is a real tragedy. But it would not affect you negatively. What's the point? What's the point of it affecting you negatively? That's nuts. Why should you feel really upset and dreadful? You can empathise and go, that's tragic, and be a little bit upset, but she suffered a massive amount of grief. It was a too strong a reaction. It was massive, and that's what anxiety is. It's an extreme reaction. It's an extreme reaction to something that's happened in your environment. And when I took that out, she stopped grieving. She went back to normal, and she was fine. And she was still compassionate. She recognised it was a tragedy, but she was no longer suffering. So the question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to suffer? Do you want to carry on suffering, or do you want to change it? So I know that's challenged quite a few people. Some are nodding, going, yeah, I agree with that. Others are going, whoa, that's too much for me. I don't like that, that's scary. The beauty of this is it gives you back power. Most people, the reason they suffer more is because they feel powerless. They feel helpless to do anything about it. I'm showing you can do something about it. I'm saying you can take back your power, because everything that's bothering you, you are running. You are controlling. And I'm living proof of that. So's Caris. So's all my clients and everyone I've helped and the colleagues I help as well. So the first thing you need to understand is why it's not working. It's not working. Whatever you're doing is not working because you're not changing something in you. There is something running in you. There's something very specific running in you. It's not everything. It's something specific with anxiety. But if you change that, it will stop. And when it stops, you can go back to being happy and healthy. So the first thing is, if you are doing external things and they're not working, that's because you need to look at you and your belief systems. Everything comes down to a belief. If you change the belief about the situation, yourself, the person, it will stop, and it will stop running. When I had anxiety about 2.5 years ago, I was living with a girl. I'd moved out into my new flat. I had an American girlfriend. She moved in with me. I had a couple of shocks and I felt anxious. That built, I had a couple more shocks, and I got paranoia. For those who never experienced paranoia, that's anxiety times double, because it's anxiety from the front and anxiety from the back at the same time. So you're now looking around you constantly for territory threats in your life. And I remember I was in my car driving down the 127 towards Southend, and I kept looking in my mirror worrying that someone's going to smash into me. I've never had that in my life. I don't care. There's no point worrying about it. I'd never bothered about it. And a couple of days later, I was stuck at traffic lights. I was still doing it, and a guy bumped me in the back. It wasn't serious. There was actually no massive dent, but it shocks me enough to go, I need to stop this now. It's ridiculous. It was kind of a wake-up call. So if what you're trying is not working, it's because you're not addressing you. Now, what is it about you not addressing? First of all, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. It's something that's happened to you. It's a shock in your life you've had. You've had a biological shock. Now, the problem with mental health is mental health implies you are nuts. You're not. It implies it's your mind. It's not. It's not your emotions either. It's a biological shock. What is a biological shock? A biological shock is something that happens to you where you go and you freeze. Maybe not on the outside like that, but certainly on the inside. And it can be a big thing or a small thing. But the type of shock that creates anxiety is feeling attacked. So whenever you feel attacked, either by someone else or by yourself, by your own thoughts, you will get anxious. That's the biological shock. Now, I haven't got to the emotions and thoughts yet, because we could go through the same shock and experience different things. So if me and Janie went through the same shock of feeling attacked, Janie could come out fighting and want to punch the person, and I could want to hide and run under a table, because that's fight and flight. But our beliefs would now be different. Janie's would be, I'm strong, I'm powerful, I'm going to knock this person out, I'm going to smash him. And mine could be, world's dangerous, people are bad, can't take it. Different belief systems. So you can't go for the beliefs first, or the emotions, because Janie's emotion would be anger. It would be fear, but it would be fueled by anger underneath it, rage, and mine would be complete fear, stuck, no strength, no power, nothing. completely different emotions. So when you try and go after the emotions first, you can get lost. But if you go after where did you feel attacked, and then find the beliefs in that, now you know exactly where to go. So the first thing you need to do is look and go, well, where am I feeling attacked? So if you're on the phone talking with a broadband company and you're getting anxious doing it, then that means on some level you're feeling attacked by it. You're either feeling attacked because your life is not going the way you want it to, and you're feeling out of control, perhaps powerless, or the person's actually attacking you, or you're attacking yourself in your own mind. And that is one of the worst ways we do it, especially therapists. Now, I'm a therapist, I know that more than anybody.
You're saying when you have that problem because someone just can't help you, that you don't feel anxious to say, oh, I'll just do without broadband because it can't be fixed. Well, I need the broadband. You know, how do you cope with things like that?
Okay, so a few months ago now, my shower broke. And I had no hot water whatsoever. Now, in that moment, my dad is old school, very much like yourself. My dad would go, you need to get it fixed, quick, go and get it fixed, call a plumber, this needs to be done, what are you going to do, how are you going to cope without a shower? Gee, let me think. I've got friends that I can go to, I've got a friend right next door to me. I was very fortunate, I belonged to a spa, I could go there, but if you haven't got that, everyone's got a friend they can shower with. So I went, I'm going to stop, because plumbers cost money, they're expensive. I want to be recommended to someone, so I know I can trust them, and I want to do it the best way possible. That's my outcome, that's what I look for. So I stopped, I breathed, I didn't do anything. I just used my friend's shower, went to the spa, and I just left it for a week or so. And I cleared how I felt about it. I changed the frustration, the anger, the upset, changed how I felt about it, cleared the emotional response. If I'd have called a plumber there and then, I did actually ask for plumbers' names from people, but everyone I asked for, I did not get a good feeling. Now that doesn't mean the plumber's wrong, it means it wasn't right for me. I didn't get a good feeling from everyone I asked. So I left it, I cleared how I felt, changed the response. And then one morning I was at my spa and I met my mate. Now my mate rents out houses. He knows how to plumb. So he said, I'll come around and look at it for you. He came around and looked at it. This was 2.5 weeks later, he came around and looked at it. He said, you need a new pump. I had a new pump. He put it on, but it didn't work. Morning. No, that's okay. You haven't missed it, you're right on time. Carry on. That's okay. Sit, take a seat, rest. So I had a new pump. He put it on, that didn't work. So he had to go and buy me a new pump. He bought me a new pump, put it on, it worked perfectly. But the beauty was, this guy owed me money. So he knocked it off the bill of what I owed him and I didn't pay a thing. Wow. Now if I'd have done it the traditional way, your way, or my dad's way, I'd have paid a plumber, possibly good 250 quid for his labour. For the pump, I'd have had to pay 150 quid because that's what it cost me. Which way was better? My way was much better. Worked for me. It was great.
If the plumber would have fixed the pump, then you'd have realised it didn't work after he left.
Exactly.
Called him back.
Yeah, exactly. Would have been a nightmare. I believe my way worked better for me. So the question I encourage you to ask yourself is your way working for you? And I'll explain what working for you means in a minute when I explain this technique. But it has to work for me. What I do in my life must work for me, make my life easy, effortless. I believe life should be effortless. Most people don't. They believe it's hard work, struggle. There's a difference between hard work, struggle, and productivity. Getting things done, achieving. You can achieve and work hard without struggle, without conflict, without too much horrible effort and things going wrong. I'm productive. But I probably do less than you guys do every day. But I'm very productive. I don't run around like a headless chicken. Most people do. I was always telling my clients, slow down, calm down, stop running around doing too many things at once. One thing, environmental thing that does create anxiety is when you try and do too many things at once. And then you feel overwhelmed and panicky because you're cramming too many things into a day. Here's the irony. Yeah. The irony is, if you died tomorrow, no one's going to say, did Janie fill out that form? Can't believe she didn't do that before she died. Did Janie do the washing? Oh. No, they're going to say, we really miss Janie. So everything you think that's important in life, not really important in life. But we're human beings, we run that. That's a whole different subject and a whole different conflict. But what I want you to realise is that there is a better way to deal with things. And I'm going to show you in a minute a basic way of doing that. So I've shown you why what you're doing so far is not working. Hopefully you get that it's something running in you. It's nothing external. It's not. Now we all have beliefs. I know you all believe in certain things. And I do some fantastic things. I do some fantastic therapies and I have my own beliefs, but I had to look at them and go, are some of those beliefs working for me? And they weren't. They weren't working for me. I believed that I took on people's energies. It wasn't working for me. Didn't solve it. I was stuck. I was suffering. I often felt this clamp around my head. It was horrible. So I went, well, is that working? No, change it. What's real? And then I changed it and now I'm fine. That's better for me. That's much better for me. I don't take on people's energies anymore. So everything is a belief. So ask yourself what works for you. Now, a lot of people, they blame external things. They blame the person. They blame the events. They blame the situation. They blame the ocean moving. They blame their name. They blame numbers. They blame the sun and the moon. They blame lots of things. I'm not saying these things do not have relevance. I'm not saying these things do not mean something. But if you believe it's affecting you, then it will affect you. And if you don't, it won't. It is just a belief. And I've seen that multiple times with my clients. And when I've cleared that belief for them, they've been fine. Whatever it was. The tricky part is how do you clear the belief? Good morning. That's all right. Don't worry. That's okay. I love British. They always apologise. Bless them. It's great. So it's a natural thing to do, but it's fine. So the key is your belief systems, and it's your belief systems about yourselves that are the problem. So you know that anxiety is biologically created by when we feel attacked. If you feel attacked by someone else or by yourself, by what you're thinking. Now you need to change that. What do you do to change that? The problem is most therapists try and go back to your past. They will go back to the shock, and this is what I used to do. They'll go back to the shock, they'll find the shock where you felt attacked, and in the case of my example, my girlfriend, it was something that happened, something she said. It was a really minor thing. She didn't actually attack me. It can be a real attack, by the way. You can actually have a real attack, and that can create anxiety. But most feelings of attack are perceptions. They're not real. And they're like when someone wags their finger at you or gets in your face or just threatens who you are, your identity. That can be an attack. And she said something quite minor, but I felt attacked. And then it built and built and built, and it got worse and worse. And what I used to do and what most therapists do is they try and go back to the past to change it. And that sometimes worked. And it did work for a lot of my clients. But some clients it didn't work for. Some clients, they'd feel better in the room, they'd leave and they'd feel crap again. And I had to ask myself, why? Why is that happening? It doesn't make sense. Why is one person getting better and another person's not? And I realised it's because they're getting triggered. They go back into the environment and something in the environment, something they see or hear, triggers them. And then they feel anxious. Very much like when you drive down the street, you see a red traffic light, you stop. You don't think about stopping, you just stop. When you see a green one, you go. It's a trigger. And the problem is that everything is a trigger for everyone if you have a negative reaction to something. For one of my clients who has been suffering anxiety, and we're working through it, it's greatly reduced now, but her handwriting was a trigger for her. Because when she was younger, she was told that she couldn't write, she was dreadful, it was horrible, and she's been running it ever since. Now, most therapists would go back to the past and change the past, but that doesn't always work, because as soon as she goes back to writing again, she'll get triggered. So what I did was get to look at her writing and go, what triggers you about your writing? There are three things. The construct of the sentence, the punctuation, and the feeling she gets when she's about to send a text or write something. And all I did was show her a way to switch those triggers off, and now she has no problems with her writing. And she did it in the present moment, not from the past. A lot of people, and myself included, for years believed the emotional response was the problem, and it's not. It's the trigger that's the problem, because the trigger triggers the emotional response. The problem is, when you try and take an emotional response out of somebody, there's resistance. The body goes, no, I need that later. And he's right, the body's right, it does need it later, if you actually get in to a situation where you require it. But most people's situations are not requiring it. It's a false perception. It's not real. So the body sometimes resists letting go of an emotional belief because it thinks it needs it. But the body has no problem switching off a trigger, because the trigger's not relevant. And once a trigger goes, it no longer triggers that response. So if you're driving down a road but you don't see a red light, would you stop? Of course not. Now here's the beauty of this, and I'm going to give you an example from my life. With this, you could go down that street and see a red light, but you may not stop because the trigger's gone. Now of course we wouldn't do that with a red light, that would be stupid. Okay, not going to get accidents. But switching off the trigger doesn't mean you don't see or hear it again, it means you don't respond to it. I had a problem with a girlfriend who a few years ago, I bought a beautiful new corner sofa a few months after moving to my flat, and she used to love laying in the corner sofa. She loved it. and I got shoved off to the side because that was my seat. But you know, you want to please your girlfriend, that's great. And after we broke up, I felt very uncomfortable in my flat for a good month or so. And I was still sitting on this bit, not in the corner where I used to sit. And I hadn't clocked it. And I sat there looking, I went around, what's the trigger, what's the trigger? And I went, oh, I'm still sitting here. It's almost like I could see her sitting there. And I could feel her sitting there as well, laying on the sofa, even though she was no longer there. So did I clear the emotional response about it? No. I put the image of her on the sofa in my mind. I did my little weird thing that I do that switches it off, and I switched it off over a period of about 2 days, and now I can walk into my lounge, I can see my sofa, but I no longer see her sitting there. So I can now sit in the corner of my sofa and be... Did I take the sofa away? No. Am I not seeing the sofa? No. I've just switched off what the sofa means to me, but I did it by changing the image of the sofa rather than the emotional response. So now when I see that, I don't feel upset or hurt that I've lost her, because it doesn't trigger that anymore. So it's really important to learn to switch off your triggers. What you need to do to solve your anxiety, the first thing you need to do, these are the steps. You need to recognise that anxiety is created by a biological response of feeling attacked. Now you may ask me, how can I say that? Well, I've done it for years with clients, with myself, by finding that response when nothing else worked, when talk therapy didn't work, when trying to get yourself out didn't work, when meditation didn't work, when exercise didn't work, when nothing they did worked, by finding the biological response of feeling attacked, that's when it switched off. Then you need to find the triggers that trigger that response. Bless you. You need to find the triggers that trigger that response. And there could be a lot, but I guarantee there'll be far less triggers than there are emotions. If you've got 100 triggers, you've got millions of emotions about it and beliefs. But you may have 100 triggers, and you can switch those triggers off very quickly. Once you've found all the triggers for your anxiety, you then need to do one more thing, or maybe a couple of things. You need to future pace yourself, seeing yourself free of the problem. Because the other problem is that when we get a problem, we can sometimes get blocked and believe we're never going to get rid of it. And we can sometimes have reasons for keeping it, because it's keeping us safe, remember. It's a biological response. The biological response is to keep us safe. So we may think we need it still. So I have to future pace my clients to bring up all their unconscious blocks and beliefs that are causing it to stay in place. When I do that and I clear the triggers, it switches off and the anxiety stops. Now, some people have more triggers than others, so it takes a bit longer. And it depends on the type of anxiety. If it's just an anxiety that's come on all of a sudden, I had one client, she was training in counselling. Her counsellor told her nothing could be done. Brilliant advice. Fantastic. Now she's stuck with it. How cool is that? So she got recommended to me. Now, she didn't believe me either because she'd been told nothing could be done. But she was struggling. It'd only been 2 months. She had a shock. It triggered her. I cleared it. It went. But other people I see have more social anxiety, which means it's everywhere. Everywhere they go, shopping, home, work, everything triggers them. Talking on the phone, talking to people, coming here will trigger them. They have more triggers because the triggers are everywhere. But once the trigger switches off, it's off, and only new triggers can come up. The same trigger cannot be re-triggered again. So I didn't have to clear my sofa a million times. I cleared it once. It took me 2 days. I'd have to keep clearing it every time I see it. It's gone. Once the trigger's off, it's off. I could see a multitude of sofas and not feel the same way. It can't be re-triggered. But some people have more triggers than others. So that's all you need to do. You need to realise that it's a biological shock where you're feeling attacked. It can be feeling powerless as well, but that's more panic attacks. So panic attacks are feeling powerless, where you feel powerless. You have a shock, I feel powerless. Anxiety, you have a shock, you feel attacked. If you have anxiety, it hits the right side of your brain, hits your cortex. If you have panic attacks, it hits the left side of your cortex. This is all based on science, all discovered by a doctor. I'm not going to get into the science of it, but just so you know, that's kind of what happens. Ask yourself, where do I feel attacked and powerless? I'm pretty sure if you ask yourselves right now, you'll all say...
Just repeat, the right side is the...
Right side is anxiety, cortex,
Anxiety.
part of the brain,
Yeah.
here. Left side is panic attacks, powerless.
It's panic, okay. Thank you.
Okay. They hit different organs, and those organs respond to a part in the brain called your cortex, which is the newest part of our brains. It's the brain that gives us rational thought. Actually, one of the worst parts of our brains because we overthink everything. So the other parts work fine. The cortex, nah, not so much. So once you know what it is, you know it's feeling attacked. Now I know some of you are still going to be thinking, oh no, it's this, this and this. But if you ask yourself, well, do I feel attacked in that situation or powerless? You're probably going to find out that you do. And then you need to find that trigger and switch it off. Now triggers are something you see or hear or feel, but I don't mean feel emotion. I mean a sensation like a gust of wind, someone touching you. One of my clients' triggers was feeling cold air. When she felt cold air, that triggered her. And it triggered her to make her not want to be better, because if she gets better, that's not safe. She's very stuck. Yes.
So, what is the difference when you say panic and anxiety? So the panic is more biological reaction, or how do you...
They're both biological reactions. Anxiety and panic are both biological responses.
So where's the difference?
The difference, in the symptoms?
Yeah, when you say right and left, and so where do you draw this line?
You don't need to know about that. I was just kind of explaining the science. The symptoms are slightly different. Panic attacks are more, you feel you can't breathe. Physically, you physically feel you can't breathe, and you can't get enough oxygen into your system, which is why they tell you to get a paper bag and blow into a paper bag, because it generates oxygen around the body. But an anxiety is literally you feel frightened.
Yeah.
You feel. I mean, there are physical symptoms. There's chapping of fingers, biting fingernails, nervous energy, but they are both stress states. So panic attacks are more breathlessness, can't breathe, can't get the oxygen. Anxiety is more a feeling of fear. I must run away and get out of here. I'm scared. What am I going to do? Yes.
When I was married, I used to have anxiety and panic attacks. I couldn't be in a crowd. I couldn't look where I was going, nothing.
Yep.
And I was afraid. I got rid of the husband. And I got
Good girl. Well done. Good girl. Yeah. Now, what I would normally do, I'm not going to do it because I have a feeling I may trigger, and I don't want to try. I'm very good at triggering people. Okay, I do that for a living. I trigger people left, right, and centre. If I was going to do that, I would put her back to her memory very briefly and say, "Well, where did you feel attacked?" And she'd go, and she'd be all over the place. I don't want to do that. But she would have felt attacked or powerless with her husband at some point. And I've seen so many clients, and every client has this. Every client feels attacked or powerless, depending on whether it's anxiety or panic attacks. There is no one who goes, no, I don't feel that. With other things out there, other things I've learned, other things everyone else learned, it's only 50-50 or 20-40. If something is the cause of something, it's always the cause of something. If I drop this pen, if I hold this pen here and let it go, it'll always drop to the floor. It won't go up, it won't go down, unless you're in Willy Wonka in a chocolate factory. It won't go sideways. It will always drop to the floor 100% of the time in this gravity field, in case anyone goes, well, what about the moon? No. So if something's the cause of something, it's always the cause of something, but that's not what we're taught these days. We're taught, oh, it could be this, could be that, could be this one, could be that one, because we're blaming external things. That's why. We're blaming the person. We're blaming the table that leaked out us. We're blaming the car accident. We're blaming the gravity, or we're blaming the moon and the stars, or we're blaming our name. One of my, a couple of my colleagues, they do numbers and your name and things like that. And that's great, I'm not putting that down, but some of them believe that's affecting their lives. Well, I get that, but now you're stuck. You're stuck with that belief system. And that's causing them suffering. I can see it in their brains. There you go, they're suffering because of it. And I actually had to change it for someone and they stop suffering. The system was great. The good bit about it works perfectly, but there's a negative side to a lot of things. A lot of things I was taught, there's a negative side to it. So I understand it. They've been taught these things as well. I love astrology, I get it totally. I think it's brilliant. But if it's causing you suffering, it's not working for you. So I'm going to explain to you what working for you means, because one thing that we all have that's a problem is our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind likes to play tricks. It loves to run us around in circles. Who else are therapists here? Brilliant, awesome. Do you all work with the mind and things or emotions? So you all know about the unconscious mind. It loves playing tricks on us. And there's often a thing called secondary gain as a therapist. And that just means, if you're not a therapist, it means it's a reason for keeping something, reason for not letting it go. And the reason I don't want to let it go is because it doesn't know it's not working for you. So I realised there's a way to get around that. And all you have to do is ask the unconscious, is it working for you? And tell the unconscious what working for you means. And you can use this not just to clear things, but with everyday situations, with decisions you have to make, everything. So for something to work for you, it must make you feel emotionally happy, joyful, wonderful and peaceful. It must make you feel mentally clear, focused, and be able to decide things and focus on things. It must make you feel physically strong, powerful, energized and motivated. It must work to make you feel spiritually grounded and connected. It must work for you in your environment to make you feel genuinely safe and secure. And it must work for you socially so that everyone around you is loving, warm, kind and friendly. Now when someone comes to me with a problem, I always ask, is it working for you? I feed those 6 things in, and usually their unconscious remembers it. They don't have to remember that. So now if I said to you, and something specific, is it working for you? You would know what I mean. Every now and again someone goes, oh, it is working for me. So I run through that list one at a time and go, well, is it making you feel happy, joyful, wonderful and peaceful? And they'll go, no. Is it making you feel mentally strong and powerful and focused? No. They might get to the environment one and think it's feeling safe for them, but I say, is it genuinely making you feel safe in your environment? And they have to answer no, because it's not genuinely doing it. And the unconscious starts to go, oh crap, that's not working. And once it does that, it's more than happy to let it go, once it realises it's not working. So what I'm going to give you now, I'm going to give you a little process that you can use on yourself or with your clients. This is the basic, this is how my system started. I call it my DTO system. And my DTO system is designed to switch off triggers. It's also designed to find the deep-rooted beliefs that are in our unconscious that we don't know are there. And I don't mean the beliefs that you all think are there. The beliefs that we all think are the problem are not the problem. The emotions that we feel are not the problem. There is a deeper belief, what I call a micro-belief, that is the actual problem. When I take that out, when I switch that off, then everything else stops. My system is designed on not removing things or taking them away, it's designed on switching them off. So I want you to imagine your brain like a switchboard. And at the moment, if you're suffering anxiety or whatever you're suffering, you have switches that are flipped on that aren't working for you. What you need to do is flip those switches off and flip on positive ones. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the most basic form. So about 2.5 years ago, nearly 3 years ago now, I was doing a self-improvement course, one-on-one with a mate of mine, full 3 days, very challenging. It was just me and him, and he pushed my buttons. I actually walked out on him at one point. So he talks about that a lot. For about 1.5 hours, he was worried. After that 3 days, something came up, a belief I had about an ex-girlfriend, long time ago, the love of my life, my first real girlfriend. I'd used everything I knew to clear it, theta healing, EFT, matrix reimprinting, you name it, I'd done everything. And it had got better. But it was obviously still running because he brought it up on the course. So the next day, on the Thursday, I remember it really clearly, on the Thursday, I had this little formula in my head for some reason, it popped in my mind. And I had this concept, and I had a belief come up on the course that one day she'd come back to me. And I said to myself, is that working for me? It wasn't, because I was upset. And I asked, what's the opposite or better? And I thought of what the opposite would be, which would be to let it go and move on. In my case, won't always be that. And then for some reason, I have no idea why, but I heard just repeat, do the opposite for a few seconds. So I did, and I literally did it for about 10 seconds. I shut my eyes and I repeated, do the opposite, do the opposite. And I stopped and opened my eyes and went, no, that's not possible. It had gone. Don't have that belief anymore. And I felt fine. In seconds, it had switched off. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I was like, it couldn't be that simple. I really, I was frustrated. I was excited and frustrated because I'd spent years trying to get over this girl who I absolutely loved, and I'd done loads of things, and it was that simple. There was a couple of other things in there as well, and I changed those as well. And I'd spent about 10 minutes, and at the end of it, I came out feeling great. And that day, I went off to my clinic, and I had a guy in there who I knew fairly well, and I'd been working with him, and I was doing the old stuff that I was doing, and for some reason said, try it. So I tried it on him. I said, I've got something, I'll try it. And it switched his stuff off really quickly. And that's how the basic 4 steps started. So I'm going to show you the basic way to switch off a thought or an emotion very easily, very quickly. This is not the trigger. This is not the future paced stuff, but it will switch off thoughts and emotions easily. And the beauty of this is it can be done anywhere. There's nothing weird to see. No one knows you're doing it. You can do it with your eyes open or shut. You can do it on the train because no one knows you're doing it. You can do it walking, shopping. I've even done it driving, but don't tell anyone.
Don't shut your eyes.
No, don't shut my eyes. No, because you can do it with your eyes open. So I concentrate. It's no different from listening to the radio. I'm not recommending it. But I have my eyes open. I've even done it while I'm talking to people. I've even done it in clinic with clients when they've triggered me. And I switch it off immediately. Because if you're a therapist in the room, you all know at some point when you speak with your client, something happens in your brain, you go, oh, I've been triggered. You don't necessarily say that, but you're feeling emotions. You can switch it off there and then. You don't need to suffer with it. So, and you can calm it, and then you go and switch it off later. So I'm going to show you a really simple way to do it. What I want you to all now, I want to show you, so I'm going to get you all to do it. It's the easiest way of doing it. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you all to think of something, a very minor situation. Do not choose something that's really intense. Choose something minor, an argument you've had with someone, something that's annoying you right now. Maybe it's me challenging your belief systems. Jonathan, whatever it might be. Think of something small and put that memory in your mind and think of the first emotion or thought that you feel about it or think about it. What's the first one that bothers you? Might be anger, guilt, might be I can't cope, might be it's too much. Think of that emotion or thought. When you've got it, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. Just the emotion, just the thought. On a scale of 1 to 10, how intense is it? 10 very high, 0 nothing. Then ask yourself, is that working for you? That emotion, that thought, is that working for you? Most of you should get a no. Ask yourself, what's the opposite or better? Now think of what you would like to feel, not about the situation, not about the person. What do you want to feel and think about yourself instead? Brilliant. Now in your heads, I'm going to say out loud, but in your heads, just repeat after me. We're going to do it for about 30 seconds. Do the opposite. 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 Everyone take a deep breath in and breathe it out. Now just think about that memory and think about the emotion that you first had, the first one that popped in your mind, the emotion and thought, and rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And tell me if it's still the same intensity or if it's gone. How many of you the emotion reduced? How many of you the emotion went? Just dropped away. How many of you it stayed the same?
I'm quite a large one, but because you said not to do it, I just started on it and then went to a different one, so I've sort of...
You got confused?
Yeah, I got a bit confused.
That's okay, don't worry about it, it's fine. If it stayed the same, that means you have an unconscious block. Okay, means you have to go deeper and find the root micro belief about yourself. But if you kept doing it on the emotional response, then it would drop down. And you don't have to check each emotion with this. You can just think of a memory, think of the first emotion, let's say it's anger, repeat, do the 4 steps, go to the next emotion, do the 4 steps, go to the next emotion, and keep going for 10 minutes, and when you've finished, you will feel better.
Well, it's just the fact that you've taken time out alone will make it a little better, because for 30 seconds you've not concentrated on that. You've sort of given it time out.
Okay, so that's a typical belief system that people have, that you, by taking time out, that works. How many people have taken time out of something and gone back to it and still felt exactly the same way? That doesn't work. I get it, that's what we think, that's our brain's trying to rationalise it. So when you think that, your brain's trying to rationalise it. If you do it this way, it will actually switch it off, so when you go back to it, you no longer feel the same way. Now you can't just do it with one emotion, because you have to do a little bit of work and clear the other emotions and thoughts. But it's very simple, it's very quick. I give this to clients where I used to give other things to clients and they couldn't do them. They were too complicated, too much to remember. Didn't want to do it. I had one lady, she'd never do it. Now she does it all the time. She loves it, it's so simple, so quick. I give it to clients to do. Every single time they can do it because it's so simple. There are 4 steps. You put the problem in your mind, you ask how you feel about it, and ask, is it working for you? No. Ask what's the opposite or better. And once you get the opposite or better, you just repeat, do the opposite in your mind for 30 seconds to a minute. And if you can, visualise the words, do the opposite at the same time. It works very, very well. It's very quick and clears out a lot of things. You can also use it on physical symptoms. If you feel tension or pain, you can say, is that pain working for me? No, what's the opposite or better? Feeling relaxed. And you can reduce your physical symptoms. It will generally just reduce your physical symptoms if the problem is chronic. But if it's acute, sometimes it takes it away. I had one client, he got foot pain. He was doing this for something else, but he decided to try it on his foot. Foot pain disappeared. He just did the basic 4 steps. Kind of. You can switch off things very quickly. Yes.
Is it just say in your mind, do the opposite, or do you have to resolve and do the opposite?
You're just repeating do the opposite in your head. Repeat do the opposite for 30 seconds to a minute, and it has the effect of switching the old thing off and the new thing on. It's that simple. Switch the old thing off and the new thing on. That's the only way I can describe it. I don't have a scientist, I can't look into your brain and go, oh, it's definitely flipping a switch. But that's what actually appears to be happening. It flips the old one off and the new one on, and it's quick. Now there's far more to the system than that. There's triggers and micro beliefs, but that's not important right now. The important thing is that's a really quick, simple technique you can use on yourself that often works when nothing else does. And all you need to do is solve your anxieties, find your triggers that make you feel attacked or powerless, and then switch them off. And if you do that, your anxiety will go. I promise you. I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching. I have run out of time.
Thank you. Very good.
I will be here if you have questions. If you want to know more about the switchy thing, then let me know. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and have a really great day. Take care.